Welcome back to Mindset Rebooted. My name is Romi.
And I'm Sam. Hey. And today we are going to be talking about the Silicon Valley bank collapse and lessons we can take away from that. We're also going to be talking about the massive tech layoffs that have been happening in Q1 of this year and what you can do to rebound if you have been impacted by it.
So if you're not familiar with the Silicon Valley bank situation, it just happened this past weekend where everybody started getting scared. Like, I didn't even know what was going on. I was on Twitter. I just saw SVB was trending. I didn't really know what is SVB. Why are all these tech founders and these these big names that we're familiar with, they're all freaking out over Twitter? And for the people who don't recognize what Silicon Valley Bank is, get us up to speed real quick, Sam.
Yeah, Silicon Valley Bank, it is definitely...
Sorry, do you say silicon or silicon?
Oh, I say silicone.
Okay, I was wondering. I was like, well, you and I are saying it differently. Go ahead. Sorry to just...
silicon. In either case, Silicon Valley Bank is a huge bank, right? But it's not a bank that is something that someone in the private sector is typically going to bank at, unless you're in the tech sector, right? Now, we know that you can be in private sector if you're in tech, but what we're saying is that usually startup tech companies, they bank with Silicon Valley Bank. And so for them, there was a huge impact by it failing. But let's talk about why it failed, right? Because I know we haven't seen a bank fail like that in recent times since the Great Recession. That was like the last time we saw like a whole bunch of banks failing. So the thing that happened with this bank in particular is that they took a lot of the investors' money and they had invested it in treasuries. And so the issue with that is not that they invested anything, right? We know that that's how banks make their money. They don't just let liquid cash just sit in their accounts. They just actually take that, invest it, make more money, and that's how they stay in business. However, when they invested in these treasuries, because of the increase in interest rates that have happened in recent months, it impacted them, and they had to sell those treasuries at a loss. Once they sold those treasuries at a loss, the investors saw that and they were like, whoa, red flag. The health of the bank is in question. Everything's at a loss. Oh my gosh. Hey, you should pull your money from this bank. Hey, you should pull your money from this bank. Tech industry is very, very small, right? So everyone knows everyone. And so you're going to have somebody shooting a message. You're going to have somebody talking about it on Twitter. Next thing you know, a good old fashioned run on the bank is taking place where everybody's just withdrawing their money all at the same time. And it's just impacting them to the point where now they don't have enough liquid cash on hand to cover the massive withdrawals that are happening, AKA failure. And so that's just us bringing us up to speed with what happened with Silicon Valley Bank.
Yeah, thanks for getting us up to speed. One thing I just want to put in there, when you said investors, what we really mean are the depositors, the tech startups that are depositing money into the bank. So they're not technically investors, they're more depositors saving their money in the bank, and the bank is investing it, and then they're over leveraged in the treasury bonds is what you just spoke on. I just wanted to make sure that people understood that these are companies depositing their funds, the money that their startup funds or their seed money or any revenue. That's what we're talking about, that these startups, people started getting scared and they did that run on the bank.
And let me just clarify. And then also when I'm speaking of the investors, what I really mean is also investors in those startup tech companies.
Okay, perfect. Good. I just wanted to kind of clarify. I'm not sure how much of our audience is too familiar with tech startups.
Yeah.
Like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Good clarification.
So we saw all the craziness on Twitter. That's where I found out about it. And then I started seeing a lot of podcasts of people who are in the industry, and they're talking about why did it fail and what's going on. And the common denominator I noticed was that there was a lot of fear. There was a lot of fear of the people who worked in these startup companies, and they didn't know if you're the founder, you weren't sure if you're going to have enough money to actually stay in business, or not even stay in business, but to even pay off your employees. And so that made me think of, like, if I was a startup, it's crazy because I essentially put all my eggs in one basket with SVB, and now for this weekend, I wasn't even sure if that basket was still there. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about taking that lesson of, because I also read other founders on their Twitter page. They're like, yeah, we're freaking out right here, but it's okay. We could still employ our people because we have a backup bank account. Yes. and we diversified where our funds were, so that when SVB was starting to collapse, we're not freaking out as much as the other people who put all their eggs in that one basket.
Yeah, that's a really, really great point, right? One bank collapse and you have all your money there. That means that that's a single point of failure, right? So a single point of failure, that cripples you if you have a single point of failure, because that means that if one thing goes wrong, the whole operations just falls apart. And we don't want that. That's the whole point of not having your eggs in one basket. That's what that good old saying is really referring to. And here's the other thing that's key to note. The FDIC only insures up to $250,000. Right. So anybody who had more, any depositor who had more than $250,000 in that account, really what was guaranteed to them was the $250,000. Now, we know that they've essentially been bailed out, right? Because a lot of these people are being made whole. They're getting their money back in total, but that's not a guarantee. That's just what's happening now in this situation. But that's not a guarantee. The only thing that is guaranteed was the $250,000 that is insured by the FDIC. Now, in life in general, there's only, we can't always guarantee everything. We don't always have everything insured, or we don't always have someone who's going to back us for everything that we have going on in our lives, right? So what that teaches me is that I cannot be dependent on one entity or one person. It means that I actually have to diversify. I have to now put my eggs in multiple baskets. And what does that mean? That means that maybe instead of me just relying on one job, maybe I have another
money making income. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like another revenue making machine, right? So maybe I have my own side hustle, right? Maybe I'm investing in stocks and crypto or whatever it is, right? All things that, again, are not necessarily guaranteed, but now I don't have a single point of failure, which is what we're trying to avoid.
I like that a lot. Having all these different side hustles, or not even side hustles, I'm just going to call them other cash flow, other cash flow. Dang, I'm losing terms right now, bro. What the heck? What's wrong with us? Why are we losing terms? But I 100% agree with that, because if all your money is in one bank, here's an example.
Other streams of income.
Other streams of income. There we go. Jeez Louise. Man, I can't believe we both blanked out for a while there. Now, here's an example that we could all relate to, or not all, but a lot of us could relate to. Is I had a friend when I was in Austin, Texas. He's a middle-aged man. He has children and everything. And he told me one day when we went into work in the office, he's like, "Oh man, someone stole my checking debit card, and they used all the money in it. And I tried to hit up the bank, but because it's a debit card, they can't really take care of it and give me my money back because of the nature of a checking account." And I was like, "Oh, dude, how come you're not using credit cards? Because if people steal your credit card and use it, the credit card company, more often than not, they're able to make sure that you're not responsible for the credit that was used." Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, because it was his debit card attached to his checking account, all his funds that him and his wife saved up were gone. There's no way to get it back. So that was one single point of failure that my coworker, my friend had, and he has a family that is relying on his income for that. And so this is taking it home, because I know a lot of us, we can't relate to the tech world. We're not startup founders or anything like that, but we could relate to personal finance and responsibility in a family nuclear dynamic.
Yep.
And other things with that. If you are with a family and only one person, maybe it's the father or the mother, only one person's bringing in money, what happens when that person gets sick? What happens if that person gets into a car accident and cannot go to work for the next 4 to 6 months?
Yep.
Is the other head of the household going to be able to take care of the family? These are all things that we could put back to ourselves when it comes to personal finance.
Yeah, absolutely. It's also one of the reasons why I agree with someone having like a life insurance policy, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, if someone passes away who's the breadwinner, at least they're able to still take care of their family when they're gone. Like that, those are the different things that we got to be thinking about is not just the now, but how do we secure our spot for the future? And the only way to do that is by having your eggs in multiple baskets, right? No single point of failure. I have a personal story. So I actually experienced that, the whole credit card stuff and everything. Yeah. So a little twist, but so I'm not a tech startup person, but what I do have as a single member LLC is my own business, right? And I had been selling things on Amazon and on Facebook. And essentially what happened was hackers ended up getting information. They got credit card information.
Your credit card or your customers?
My business credit card.
Wow.
So I was doing drop shipping, and real quick, just a brief overview so that it can make sense for you as the listener. What I was doing is I was flipping items, right, on Amazon. That's what I was doing. I was essentially selling things at a higher price, but getting it from a supplier at a cheaper price. And then I was selling it at the higher price. Sorry, just said that. But anyways, in order for me to do that, I was using my own business credit cards to do this. Now, one of my business credit cards, actually 3 of them, okay, the information was compromised. And I found that people were trying to use it and purchase items. And it was like, oh, okay. So I had to put a halt on that. Now, fortunately, I was not limited in my business credit cards. I'm not going to tell you the amount of business credit cards I have, but I have a significant number of business credit cards that I was able to still rely on. So even when I had to pretty much cut those out and I was waiting for new credit cards to come in, I was still able to operate because I had other ones. The waiting time for the other ones that were compromised, it didn't like slow my roll essentially. And I was able to still keep the show rolling. And that's what we need to do. We need to be able to keep the show rolling. It's the same way in the sports world, right? If you have a team who's only reliant on one star player, if that star player gets injured, well, now you failed. But if you have a homegrown team where everyone has a significant role and everyone is trained to step up and show out when their number is called, then you're going to have a team that's able to operate and at least sustain where they have been. They may not increase their performance, but maybe they're able to sustain, a good record, while their star player is taking time to recover. And that's really the whole idea behind this, not putting all your eggs in one basket, whether it's sports, whether it's your own side hustle, whether it's, just you having a life insurance policy. If you're the tech startup company, having multiple bank accounts, that you have your funds in, so that you
different savings account, high yield savings account. You have a life saving accounts, which is most personal finance recommend 3 to 6 months of your monthly expenses are saved there in case anything happens. And then having a larger savings account for when you want to do larger purchases, maybe a home or a vehicle. Yeah. Those are all ways to diversify where your money is held so that if one is compromised, the other is not.
Exactly.
And I want to switch it up. We've been talking about finances a lot. I want to talk about fitness as well. Yeah. We saw during COVID that no one could go into a gym. Everyone was kicked out. And then we saw a lot of people's mental health start deteriorating because they were relying so much on exercising in the gym. That was one single point of failure when it came to your mental health and physical wellness. But then once we started seeing people like, okay, well, I'm going to start incorporating outdoor activities, whether that's walking. I'm going to start incorporating home workouts with my physical weight, my body weight exercises. Now it's like on a personal level, even though I don't go to the gym as often as I would want to, I could just do body weight squats and push-ups at my house, and people are like, hey, you're still in great shape. And this is something that we should be looking at ourselves, because a lot of us, we may not really look at fitness as an accessible outlet for ourselves, but really it's always accessible, because when you stand up, you are doing some type of physical activity already. So it's just changing the mindset as well of how you can improve yourself. We diversify the way that me and Sam learn in this show by reading business journals, I just mentioned Twitter earlier. We look at podcasts, we look at what's on the news. There's diversification of information gathering, and then we also learn from people, from different mentors as well. So everything really is diversified. It's just we need to make sure that we set up those systems so that in case, for example, one of my mentors, in case all of a sudden my mentor disappears, like they get sick or anything, well, am I still learning from somewhere else? Am I continuing to grow myself and find new ways to improve my skill set?
I love that. Exactly. That is exactly what it's all about, right? And we just need to have like this huge ecosystem of learning, right? Just everyone is able to interact, be interchangeable, and help one another out so that we don't have that single point of failure, right? That's the whole point. We don't want to be over reliant on one source. That is the key lesson.
What's going on, you guys? I got to interrupt this episode real quick because we have a goal with this podcast. We want to help out so many people, so much more people. So help us by following this podcast so that we can reach even more people. Let's get back to the episode.
We talked about the tech companies who were impacted by Silicon Valley Bank, but also what about the people who work for tech companies who experienced layoffs from tech companies? Now, this is unrelated to Silicon Valley Bank, but still in the world of tech, we've seen a lot of different things shift, right? And those people, they may have been over-reliant. Maybe they only had that one source of income, their job, but they just experienced a layoff. And they're like, man, what do I do? And now they're back out on the market looking for another gig. And there's some people who have been able to rebound right away, but then there's other people who have been struggling to find another position. And what I submit to them is that, hey, you have the experience, you have the know-how, but maybe what you're doing wrong is is in terms of strategy, how you are actually applying to new positions and how you are selling yourself to other employers, because I see a lot of people struggling to get hired now.
I like that you brought this up because I was on LinkedIn just the other day and I see a lot of people talking about, hey, I was recently, they say they're a victim of the recent layoffs at whether it's Meta or some other large Fortune 100 company, right? And it's easy to be like, to think that, oh, wow, everyone's losing jobs. There's no jobs in the market in the field of tech. When in actuality, that's just the big Fortune 100s. Like, we need to diversify where we're looking for work. A lot of these people who are saying, I can't find a job if they are trying to get back into the workforce, they're just looking at the biggest names, your Facebooks, your Amazon, your Netflix. But what about all the small, medium-sized businesses?
Yeah.
Right? There's so much more. If you open up all the applications or job postings out there, there's significantly more of job available in the small and medium-sized businesses. So that's one way to just open up and diversify where you're searching for jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's the thing too, when you're searching, and I'm glad that you brought up the smaller markets versus like the enterprise and mid markets, because if you're someone out there who just got laid off and you're looking for another position, whether you're looking at small, mid-market, enterprise, whatever, understand that your approach to these different companies may be different depending on the market that they're in, right? So if you are someone who's dealing with the mid-market, enterprise level, chances are they have that, what was it called? Is it ATS? The
automatic tracking system,
yeah,
I think is
right.
Yeah.
Like when they're looking at resumes. So sometimes the verbiage that you're using on your resume is not being picked up by that tracking system because it's not an actual human that's reading it. It's the tracking system and it's searching for these keywords. And so now you have to tailor your resume to the job posting. Make sure that your resume has those keywords so that you can actually get looked at by an actual human. But then your approach might be different with a smaller business who actually doesn't use that. Is that correct?
Yeah. So before I touch on the small SMB side of things, with the enterprise companies, because they have the automatic tracking, another thing you could do when you target that segmentation is actually find all the HR leaders in that enterprise company. Because besides the automatic tracking, it would help you if whoever's a recruiter sees like, oh, okay, we're actually have multiple mutual connections. Because when you're such a big organization, you're going to have a lot of people in it. So for example, if I worked at Google and Sam, you applied for a position and then I go on your LinkedIn page and I notice that you're connected with a lot of other Google employees, as a recruiter, that tells me that you might be a better personality fit, culture fit for us. Before the resume ATS system says that I should pull up your resume, just seeing that connection helps out a lot as a recruiter for enterprise.
I agree with that. And the other thing I will throw to that before I toss it back to you is those connections, it also helps if they endorse you.
Yes. And this is the endorsement. This is all throughout. So it's not just for enterprise businesses that you're trying to get into. It's all throughout. The more endorsements you have, that is your word of mouth someone put their name, their position, their reputation on the line to say that so and so or you, Sam, are skilled in XYZ. That's what the endorsement is. Now, going to back to your question about what's an effective way to apply for SMB? Is that what your question was? Yeah. So with that, SMB tends to be this would be like your startup companies or your startup companies that are getting ready to expand, meaning that they start off in maybe 1 to 10 employees. Now they want to go to 50 to 100 employees. And with that, it's actually the automatic tracking system may not necessarily be there because they don't have enough resumes to require automation. And so there's more of a real human interaction that's going through all these documentations. In those instances, because they're startup or they're small teams, you could actually directly connect with the people who are going to interview you. You could actually directly connect with the person who will be your direct supervisor, your team lead, or your actual teammates in whatever capacity you do. And because of that, because of the nature of small business, you could actually start those conversations before you even apply.
That's awesome. And I agree with you because I think I've shared this on other podcasts. A lot of my, a lot of the jobs that I have received has not been from me like just directly applying. I actually may have applied after being hired as a formality, but it was first off of the connections I had. And so in this situation, I think if you're someone who's looking for a gig, tapping into that smaller business market is really a gem because you actually get to connect and show your personality early on, which is leverage for you. I believe that is.
I 100% agree. 100% agree with that. Did I cut you off?
No, you're good.
And the thing is, a lot of these small SMB sized businesses, these founders are more likely than not former executives or high level or senior level employees in the enterprise companies. So what that means, if we look at it tactically, if I have connections with someone who's founding a new company, I automatically have a mutual connection with someone who's the recruiting at that enterprise company we're talking about.
That's true. And here's the other thing too. That person is also bringing that wealth of knowledge and experience that they had from that enterprise. So now, even without you working at an enterprise, you're still getting that same valuable training. And even more so because they more than likely have more time to dedicate towards you as opposed to at the enterprise level where it's like busy. You know what I mean? So I think that that's also another great thing about that.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say about targeting SMBs when it comes to trying to find new jobs is that there are significantly way more open positions for SMB than enterprise. Our entire U.S. economy and nation is based on the medium and small-sized businesses. That's where most of our money comes from. It's not enterprise. And I think a lot of people, because of these buzzwords, your Meta, your Amazon, your Google, Oracle, we tend to forget that there's so much more available for us.
Yeah. And you know what? We touched on small businesses, and I kind of want to tie this in with the not putting your eggs in one basket. I would encourage small businesses who are looking to also diversify their clientele, for it to not just be the average consumer, but for it to also be government, right? You can get contracts like with government as a small business person, especially if you're someone who is who owns a disabled veteran small business. Like those are different things that really will help you in terms of getting some funding from the government because they got to spend it.
Yeah, and it's funny you just mentioned that because here in Sacramento, there's a local drone manufacturing company out here who just got 2 contracts with the government. One was with the U.S. Air Force and the U.S. Navy. So those 2 contracts already, they start off at around $30 or $40 million. But if all the options are taken, like with most contracts, there's always other options, like milestones that people could actually make that deal bigger. If they take all those options with the federal government, that one company could essentially make hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah. And
that's because the government has the money to spend.
Oh, yeah, dude. And let me tell you a little bit about my experience when I was in the Navy. So it's funny because like at my first duty station, even at my second, it doesn't matter. I was dealing with aviation. And a lot of times when the plane needed to be fixed, I mean, even for something as simple as getting a screw, right? You're thinking, oh, let's go to, Home Depot or something like that. Let's get this real quick. It's going to be cents. No, we can't do that. We got to order it through this way. And, so-and-so, we have to get it from this supplier. Okay, sure. How long and how much? Supplies going in. I mean, you're talking about like $18 for a couple of screws. Like, it was like ridiculous. It's like, wait, what? And so whoever that supplier is, oh man, kudos to you. You're getting hella bank, and shout outs to you. But these are just some of the ways in which you can, really, really upscale. It's not just being reliant on one source, being able to diversify. And I'm telling you, the government has tons of money to spend. So if you're a small business, start looking into supplying the government.
Yeah. And I actually want to touch on that too. Again, so we know there's a lot of special interest groups, right? Yep. Or I'll say cultural groups, and that the government wants to support these businesses owned by those cultural groups. And so that's another way. So it doesn't necessarily have to just be a military contract. It could be anything else where, hey, you're less than 35 years old and you're starting a company. We want to get more young entrepreneurs out there. Or it could be saying, hey, you, women-owned businesses, minority-owned business. There's so many things. Or hey, if your focus is on dance, we want to support cultural dance. Your focus is on arts, like where you're actually not performing arts, but other arts. They're going to put money into it because the government they want to incentivize a lot of this innovation. And the innovation, it comes from a lot of us who are in the private sector.
Yeah, that is exactly where it comes from. Exactly. And then here's the other thing. Now you talk about the whole innovation stuff. I know so many people who have worked with the government, right? And some people are banking on just staying with the government, but they don't realize, and again, this goes back to not putting your eggs in one basket. They don't realize that in the private sector, for the skills that they've learned while working with the government, they can get offered crazy cash for their skills. And so really the goal is to put yourself out there, right? Like going back to like the whole, if you're someone who's on a job search right now, or even if you currently have a job, to me, it's not bad to shop around. Why? Because that's giving you leverage. If you get an offer from someone for a crazy amount of money, like way more than what you're currently making, even if you like working where you're currently at, you can take that to your employer and be like, hey, I just want to give you a heads up. I was offered this from another company or a couple other companies. Are you able to increase my salary here? You're able to walk in with leverage.
Yeah, and it's not, and I know your example was a financial leverage, but there's also a different leverage you have there. So say that a company did offer you 1.5, pretty much 150% of your current salary. This is a company that's trying to recruit you away from your current job. You could take that, hey, this company wants to hire me for 1.5 my current salary. However, I really believe in the mission that I have at my current job. Are there other opportunities for me to grow and gain more skill? Mm-hmm. Because like some people, they just like, yes, get as much money as you can, but sometimes it's just getting more skill set would be better for you, especially if you're more of an entrepreneurial mindset. You're like, well, like I'm working at the startup company. I loved it. I have direct access to the CEO, the COO, the CMO, and the CFO. Let me get skills from them, and then I'll use those skills to start my own company, which will give me bigger returns ideally than just taking a 1.5 salary increase.
That's absolutely so. It's delayed compensation.
Exactly.
Right? Because you actually are getting compensated. You're getting compensated with the new connections that you're making and the experience that you're gaining, which is just invaluable. Like you said, getting that salary increase is great, but sometimes that experience is just even better. And I love that, bro. Like, yeah, I don't even want to beat that dead horse because that's just, yes, experience is absolutely, yes. That's
Thank
all.
you. I have nothing much more to say. I was really excited to talk about diversification. And it's crazy how we started off with, tech startup diversification finances. And then we even moved into the way that we approach learning and compensation for ourselves. Mm-hmm. So I have nothing else to say. Would you like to do any closing statements?
Yes. Closing statement is this. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast and share it with someone else. We are really growing on this platform and we want to continue to grow with you. We appreciate you. My name is Sam Hay.
I guess my name is Romi. I didn't know that we're introducing ourselves again.
Oh, no, we're not.
No, we're keeping this. I'm keeping all of this. Go ahead and end it, brother. Say your final line that we always end with.
Until next time, Mindset Rebooted. Sometimes when things go wrong, you can't blame life, 'cause
when you shot your shot, what was your aim like? What were you targeting? Cause if it ain't right, and you still go with it, then that is on you.